Good morning. It's your girl Rasati here in Singapore, Sunday morning, 9 o'clock, and I wanted to jump on real quick because I woke up with an issue on my brain. Yeah, it happens. This actually happens to be something I've been pondering a lot lately, but it kind of hit me this morning when I woke up and was going about my morning ritual of brain exercises, reading posts, researching, just kind of engaging real quick in the morning. And it occurred to me we kind of settle a lot in our lives when it comes to our worth. The fact that we pay thousands of dollars for a college education, for certifications, and then take thousands of hours and put it behind work that we go in to do because we want to get that real life experience, and we don't really think about how we determine our self-worth until we become an entrepreneur. So most of the time when we go job hunting, right, first thing we do is usually look at how much the job is paying before you even look at the criteria. At least that's what I do or used to do. You go into the job section of the classified ads in the newspaper or online, whatever, and you're looking for how much they're willing to pay you. And then you go through and look at what it entails, like how many hours, what's the commute like, what's the job description, what kind of, will you be working behind a computer? Will you be standing all day? What kind of stuff are you doing, right? So we think about all those things when we look at trying to find a job. But when we become entrepreneurs, for some reason, we feel like we need to start at the beginning. Like, I feel dumb for asking for $10. I feel uncomfortable asking for $50. It's a real stretch to ask you for $100. But the point is, all of that experience that you've garnered over the years is worth that. People are out there paying thousands of dollars to people who don't have the experience you have, haven't lived through the things that you have. I had a conversation with a friend of mine very quickly the other day, and they were like, well, do you make money on your podcast? That's not what I'm creating this podcast for, though. Granted, I'm creating a humongous body of work, and I'm really proud of that, but the point is, I'm not doing this for money. I'm doing this because I want to share with you what's going on in my head as it happens. If I have an epiphany, I want to share it. Part of it is because I'm documenting for myself. Part of it is because you need to know what this journey is like for real. Like, this hustle is ugly. It's 2 a.m. mornings when you have to wake up at 6 a.m. to take your kid to school. It's where you accidentally fall asleep during the day because you're so tired from the week's worth of late nights. It's because your body is trying to catch up. You get migraines at the most inopportune moments, but you got to push through regardless. I work harder now than I did ever before in a job, but I tell you what, it's worth the freedom. I get to shift my work hours depending on what's going on in the day. And it's not so bad. I don't have to call into work. I don't have to MC. I haven't called out my work, since I started. I haven't given lots of excuses for why I can't come in or why I don't want to do stuff. I still get things done. I feel good about this work, right? And the fact that I can go sit at the playground and work while I'm watching my baby girl play with her friends, while she can get some fresh air and I'm still spending time with her, that's major to me. But it upsets me thinking back now that I looked for jobs that were like 4 or 5K a month, right? And they would determine when I worked, how I worked, how much I worked. They determined, regardless of what time I was supposed to punch out, whether I continued on into the wee hours of the morning or whether they decided to like message me at all hours of the night. I had to deal with that stuff. They didn't care that I was a mom. Singapore has a long way to go where it comes to human resources and women in the workforce because they need to understand that even though some of us have maids, I don't, right? I still want to go home and see my kids, man. I brought them into the world for a reason. You want to increase the birth rate here in Singapore, you got to make sure that women feel like it's worth it to have a child, to be able to be home with the child and still make a living enough to be able to survive in Singapore. Now, I'm telling you, you can survive, but a lot of people have to change their mentality around what it means to survive. I can do the bare minimum. We can have a pretty great life. But yeah, sometimes we want good things too, cool things too. But that's where that worth comes in, right? In the workforce, whether it's Singapore or the US, you allow someone else to tell you whether you're worth the job or not. Because honestly, if I don't get the job that I'm looking for, I'm going to continue looking until I find a job. A lot of times we have to drop our expectations down by the riverside and get whatever we can because we've been at this for too long and still haven't gotten a job. Case in point, the first job I got here in Singapore was not doing what I really wanted to do. I settled. I went through the want ads and I looked and looked and looked and eventually I found a place that was hiring for an admin assistant. Yeah, admin assistant. Now, I will admit that even though I had tons of experience, I was a senior data analyst, I was an event coordinator, I was a marketing coordinator, I had been assistant to the VP of HR. I had done a lot of different things. But in Singapore, they're very, very narrow-minded as far as work is concerned. When they see a diverse resume, they don't know what to do with you. So they didn't know where to place me. So I had to keep dropping my expectations until I could find someone that was willing to hire me, because it was my first job in Singapore. I didn't have any experience in Singapore. I don't know what the market wants. I know what the US wants very, very clearly. I could do that with my hands tied behind my back. So coming here, I had to depend on the fact that I spoke very well, that I was able to organize information, and I had some planning experience. So I ended up working for Taste of Tradition, which is a wine company, and I did all of their marketing coordination, which meant that I organized dinner parties and wine tastings and events. But that's not what my job description was. Once I got into the job, that's what they gave me to do because they needed help. But originally, what my job was admin assistant. I was supposed to coordinate just bits and pieces of information within the company itself and organize for them to be able to more efficiently do what they needed to do. But at that point, I wasn't making a ton of money. I was making $3,500 a month. Okay? Obviously, that's more than zero, but it was not what I was expecting. Not for the amount of money I was used to working. And that was about $5,000 a month in the USD. Okay? So I did what I had to do, but that also meant that I needed to change the way I dressed. It meant that I needed to commute every day from, at the time I was living in Whampoa all the way to Tai Seng. It meant that I had to pick up lunch along the way because their culture was they go out to eat every day. My culture was not like that. I normally pack a sandwich and I sit by my computer and eat while I work. I'm a workaholic that way. But they told me what I was worth. Now, after that job, I decided it wasn't the right fit for me. I had to get out of there, and I found a different job. From there, I decided to go into the Grand Hyatt. Now, I took a major pay cut and went to work for a bigger corporation because I found that small corporations don't always have the infrastructure that I need to be able to really make a difference. I was expected to create the infrastructure, which is difficult because small business owners don't always know what they want. They know what they don't want, but they don't always know how to tell you what they want. So I went to work for a bigger corporation. Grand Hyatt was $2,500 a month. Not bad, still plenty of money, but at that point, I was doing a whole lot more work. Now, they told me the hours were shift work. The shifts were anywhere from, I think the 7 o'clock shift, I needed to be there dressed and ready, which means I have to go there earlier, get dressed, and then go to work, right? So I would get there by about 6:40, 6:45, and I was supposed to be done by 1:30, which means I finish up work and I can check out already. But that's not what happened. Chances were that the paperwork was not done, they needed extra work to be done, and there was no overtime. So what would happen is I would stay until about 4 or 5 o'clock and then go home. That's a really long ass day, but I wasn't being paid for the extra work, but the work still needed to be done. So their time, their hours were not conducive to being able to have a fully functioning family because first of all, it was shift work and I had a small child. Luckily, I had my mom, my grandparents, and 2 maids that were able to help out. But I still homeschooled her because that was my prerogative. I wanted to teach her. I wanted to be the one in charge of her learning. I wanted to be the one to be able to say, I taught her some things. I don't want to look back and say, oh, my maid taught her and she went to school and I just barely saw her. That's not what I wanted. That's not the life I wanted to lead. So I went from feeling like I was worth 3,500 to suddenly feeling that I was barely worth 2,500 because I would get in trouble all the time. I would make a lot of mistakes. But honestly, that was the best way for me to learn because as time went by, as a team leader, I was able to help other people through those same hurdles, those same mistakes, because I'd already made them and I knew exactly what was going to happen next. So from there, after about 2 years, I decided, you know what? This shift work thing is killing me a little bit. I can't do this anymore. So I went back into the workforce looking for a job, and I found a position where I was creating curriculum. I was in education. I felt better about that because I felt like it was more conducive to what I wanted to do in life. I'm a teacher by nature. I teach many, many things. I've taught math, I've taught English, I've taught manners, I've taught emotional intelligence, I've taught conflict resolution, I've taught all kinds of stuff. So I went into a position where I thought it would expand my horizons. And again, it was a little bit of a pay hike. I got 3,500 again, which made me feel better. It was office hours, perfect. But I was doing something I'd never done before. I was creating curriculum for drama and science for the age group of 3, 4, 5, and 6. How do you teach a 3-year-old? You got to be there to play with them a lot. But I did it regardless. I found a way to organize the material enough so that we could have a full 45-minute class. Then it was up to me to make sure that there were people scheduled to be able to teach those classes, even though I was in charge of creating curriculum. I also was in charge of Hike It, which was a history-based tour of Raffles, the area, the Ancient Civilizations Museum, and the bronze statues in and around Raffles. So that was really cool. I enjoyed that. I learned a lot. But even then, it was a lot of outside hours. It was a lot of doing work at home. It was a lot of taking my work home with me. And it was not conducive to raising a child. From there, I was able to move on and I got a different job. And this time it was assisting a tuition company. So I got to see tuition in Singapore firsthand. And I realized, you know what? If MOE doesn't tighten up and figure out what's going on, there will be a way for people to create a curriculum and submit it as home-based learning, as in homeschooling. Because I looked into that when I was taking care of baby girl, and they could basically supplement all of the child's needs through tuition classes and still pass the PSLE with no problems. The only thing they would be missing is the interaction of school children and learning how to learn in a group versus learning on your own, as in sharing the teacher, not bursting out and interrupting class. So I was there for a little while, and that was a match to the paycheck I was getting before, still 3,500. And from there, eventually I moved on to an international school that I helped set up. And I had fun. It was a lot of new experiences, a lot of things I've never done before, but I allowed other people to tell me what my time was worth. And I also allowed them to dictate what was my time and what was their time. Now, I don't know if you feel like this, but I did. I definitely did. When I was working for someone else, I felt like because they were paying me, they had the right to adjust my time, to adjust my workload as they saw fit. And this was a lot of times without writing, without an agreement of any kind between the two of us, but because they were paying me, I felt obliged. I felt the duty. And I didn't like that anymore. So that's when I decided to quit my job completely and not re-enter the workforce, but try to forge a way for myself. And I did. And I am. And I feel good about it. But there were times in my journey where I felt ashamed and guilty to ask for money for things that I do naturally, because they occur naturally to me. But I've since realized that the way I think is not the way you think. The things that I see are not the things that you see. The solutions that I see that might be creative to you come naturally to me. And for me, I went from having someone else tell me I was worth $3,500 a month to not feeling sure if I was worth $100 per call. Not being sure if the courses that I was creating, the classes that I was giving, the PDFs that I was creating were worth the money I was charging for it. So a lot of times I undercharged because it felt bad until someone said yes. It took me a lot to learn about the fact that I was worth the money I was charging, and worth more than that actually, because I was still undercharging. I still feel like I'm undercharging. I'm getting ready to go through a change in prices at the moment. I know I can help you create the life that you want. I know that I can help you learn to listen to your emotions and then start fixing from the inside rather than just adjusting on the outside. Drinking on a Friday night because you had a long week, that's not the solution. That's a quick fix. Because you still have to go through the hangover, you still have to go through maybe drinking again on Saturday night, and then maybe sleeping all of Sunday just to kind of set yourself up for the week, and go through another week. That's going to be long. I know I can help you feel like your job is actually worth the time you're putting into it, because you need to adjust a couple things in your interactions, your daily interactions at work. I know that in your relationships, as in your friendships and your emotional relationships, your romantic relationships, I know I can make a difference because I know I can help you enhance your communication. I know I can help you learn to actively listen and then use all of that data that you gather from all of your conversations, from all of your relationships to make your relationship even more effective, even more meaningful. You can get through those. Hey, how are you? What did you do today? Where did you go have lunch? Okay, what time you coming home tonight? All right, I'll see you later. Get past those trivial conversations to more important ones like, oh my gosh, I felt great today because, and I accomplished this because, and I learned that because. I would rather you have those conversations. And I know I can do that because I've done that so many times before. But it took me a long while to get out of my way and ask for what I was worth. And not to give you discounts until someone bit, and not to give you sale prices because I needed to sell more. To give you a full hour of me, to listen to you, to help you understand what's going on in your life, and guide you through whatever entanglement you happen to be in. It took me a long time, but I'm glad I went through it. But understanding that I once allowed someone else to tell me what I was worth versus learning to ask for what I was worth, it took a lot of uncomfortable conversations. It took a lot of desperate moments where I had to decide, hey, you know what? I'm not going to operate from a lack-based mentality. I'm not going to ask because I need this right now. I'm going to ask because I'm worth it. Case in point, I had a meal prep client. I have a meal prep client. And honestly, it started with $50 a week. Now, granted, I was making 3 meals per day for 7 days. And it was difficult for me to even ask for $50 because it's something I'd never done before. And it's not something I wanted to make a business out of. I was doing it out of the kindness of my heart. But I know I can't pay for all the groceries by myself. It's not charity like that. But eventually, as he had more stipulations and more dietary restrictions, I felt great increasing the price because I needed it to be worth my time. I needed to stop thinking about, okay, how much does groceries cost? And you're just going to pay me for the groceries because it's going to take me all damn day to make 21 meals for you. So that means you're going to pay me an hourly rate as well. It took me a while to work up to the price that I'm charging now. But you know what? It relieved a lot of pressure for me. It relieved a lot of stress for me. And now it's a happy working relationship because it's still an affordable rate for him. He doesn't have to go out and spend it every day. It's there sitting in his fridge. He can take it wherever he needs to go. And I feel good because it's worth my time. It's worth my energy. I get to keep a profit. That makes me happy. No, I'm not ripping him off. No, I'm not selling him a great fantasy and under-delivering. I'm making good on my word. I'm worth the effort. If you go into a restaurant and you buy a pasta dish, or maybe it's a seafood dish, you're going to pay top dollar for that, right? But you're not just paying top dollar for the ingredients. You're paying for the staff. You're paying part of the rent, the electricity, the ambiance of the restaurant. You're paying for all of that. And most of you will happily, willingly, without thinking twice, pay for a nice restaurant setting to eat your dinner in. But most of you will not pay for a physical fitness trainer. You won't pay for a licensed counselor. You won't pay for a coach who can help you through some of your blocks in your business or in your parenting or in your relationship. Why? Because it's not normal yet. It's still a little out there. It's still cutting edge because it's not normal yet. There was a time where not everyone drank coffee. Well, guess what? Starbucks changed all that, huh? Not everyone drank smoothies. Boost changed all that. Because it's now easily accessible, and because there's such a demand for it, they're able to charge whatever they need to charge because they know the business is going to be there. But for me, I had to work through that. I had to make sure I showed up every day. I had to make sure this podcast was up and running every day. It made me really think about what I was consuming and what I was doing with my life. it made me level up, which means with the level up comes a new layer of intelligence from me, a new layer of intuition, insight, more pop culture references, because you know how I feel about pop culture. But that means that there is a good energy exchange. The amount of time I put into actually learning how I can help you guys, what's relevant to you, what do you feel? I had to get in touch with the millennial mindset. Okay? How do you process information? What do you feel about relationships? Because I don't see that many people that are booed up at the moment. There are a lot of situationships going on. But I had to understand that, which meant, unfortunately, I had to get into a few situationships myself. Now, I'm not a girlfriend kind of girl. I'm a wife. I've always been a wife. I've only been in 2 relationships in my entire life, and I'm almost married both of them. I was engaged to both of them. Not at the same time, I promise. But I had to get into that mindset. I had to really understand what y'all are going through in order for me to give you the kind of information you need so you can get yourself out of those situationships. All of us want love. All of us want to be appreciated. All of us want to feel our worth. And so for me to do all of that research, to do all of that digging and understanding, I really needed to make sure that I can get into your mindset. Good morning, Govind. I need to understand what you're going through. I need to understand what you were raised with. My mindset versus a millennial mindset is very different. First of all, I don't even think I was meant for my generation, okay? I'm a very, very old soul. I believe that even though arranged marriages were completely uncanny, they built the kind of relationships that lasted because you learn to hate each other first. You learn to respect each other next. And then you learn to like and love each other. And that was a different kind of love. That was an unconditional kind of love. Here we fall in love with the way you look, the way your body looks, the way your attitude is. Do you have swag? And then little by little you go through a couple things and you see if you can make it through each different hurdle. And it takes a lot of work. And no one teaches us that you're allowed to disagree with the person you love and you can still make it work. No one teaches us that it's okay to come from 2 different backgrounds and 2 different mindsets and 2 different types of culture, as in your family culture, and still blend it together and make it work. No one teaches us how to do that. We got to figure it out for ourselves. So for me, I had to learn what my worth was. I give you every piece of me. I give you all of my experience, all of the death, the tragedy, all of the pain, the suffering, the scars, everything I've ever lived through. Open book, I have nothing to hide from you. I want you to succeed. I want you to know what I had to go through. So hopefully you don't have to go through it yourself, but you can learn from me instead. And from that, all I'm asking for is an equal and opposite energy exchange. If I give you my heart, it's only just that I ask for money in return. That's another type of energy exchange. You show me that I'm worth it. Not everyone will understand this, and that's okay. I'm not meant for everyone. And as loving and accepting and supportive as I am, I do have a hard iron fist as well. I do put my foot down a lot. I'm not going to let you bullshit yourself into living like this mediocre life. Because I know you're capable of more. I want that for you. I want that for my daughter. And the way I raise her is the way I'm going to raise you up too. That's just the way I am. So, once I realized that I did not want anyone else to tell me what I was worth, and once I realized that I set my own prices based on how I felt I was worth, I had to change a couple things. I had to learn that I felt worthy of all the things that I was asking for, that I felt worthy of the time I was giving and the time I was asking for in return and the money that came along with that. It took a long, long path, but I feel good about it. I feel like it's fair. I feel like I'm not asking for anything out of the way. And while you may wonder, okay, she talks about her life experience a lot, what background does she have? What paperwork does she have? Well, guess what? I have a bachelor's in psychology. I have a master's in education. I have a certification from Villanova for human resource management. And then I have 20 years of work experience. But more than that, I've lived through 4 abortions. I've lived through a divorce and a major breakup in college. I have lived through deaths of so many people. I have lived through the fear of abandonment throughout my life. I've lived through 5 different countries, 10 different schools, 7 different languages before I hit the age of 14. I've lived through sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse. And I still walk tall, and I still love all of you. And if you want to ask me which one actually weighs more when it comes to coaching, I think the life experience does. But if you need the paperwork, I got that too. Bottom line is I love, love what I do. And I love all of you. And I see the potential for all of you to just bloom and really thrive. And I want that for you. And if you feel like the way I speak helps, if you feel like the way I talk, the way I walk, the way I give you strange alliterations from movies and music, if that helps you, then I'm your girl. But that's up to you. So, with that being said, you know where to find me. I'm here waiting. And I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. I love you guys.